everyone, and welcome to Educational Webinar Jam. Today's webinar is about integrating technology with Bloom's taxonomy. This session is delivered by Isra Osman. With over 13 years of teaching experience, Isra holds a TEFL and a diploma in teacher training from London Training College, Pathways course from IH London, CELTA equivalent, and CET course. Also having 3 years of teaching experience in reputable institutes. Isra is currently the founder of Teachagen as well. Welcome, Isra. Isra, can you hear us, please?
Yes.
Welcome, Isra. Walaikum assalam. So, floor is all yours, Isra.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me today. I'd like to thank Ms. Maria for her efforts and Education Webinar Jam for having me today and joining you all, ladies and gentlemen. So let's start now. So in today's session, we are going to learn how we can integrate Bloom's taxonomy. We can integrate technology into Bloom's taxonomy. But before we do this, I'd like to know a little bit more about you. So if you have a phone or a camera that you can scan this QR code with, please do so and start sharing some information about yourself, like your name, where are you from, your occupation. If you cannot scan this QR code, if you don't mind, Ms. Maria, to share the link for this QR code in the chat pod with the attendees. Okay, so now I'm going to take you to the link that you are supposed to scan. Okay, so when you scan it, this is what you will see. Okay, you will find the map. So I want you to check where you are now or where you're from if you want to, and click on add here. Okay, you can search the place by name, or you can simply drag and drop this pin anywhere on the map, wherever you are from. And then you will be able to write a little bit about yourself on that pin. Okay, I can see that you are writing about yourselves in the chat pod, which is great. Now, I would prefer if you do it on Padlet, because I want to show you how Padlet works, and this can be a remarkable source that you can use at your lessons with your students. Okay, Ms. Nausheen, Dr. Pierre, Mr. Ahmed, Mr. Bassem. Okay, thank you very much for writing your information at the chat pod. Is the link not working? Have you tried using the Padlet link? Okay, so this link, I'm gonna share it again here. Once you click on it, it will open Padlet website for you. No, it doesn't need registration. Okay, no problem. Anyways, this is a website that I think you should all try out later because it's very, very interesting and you can use it as an icebreaker with your students or with anyone that you are attending a training or a webinar with for the first time. Okay, so maybe you can try it later. Okay, I can see that there are some people who actually got in and started following me. Okay, so let's see. Uh-huh. Okay, no problem. So getting back to our presentation, thank you all for sharing your information. Now, today we are going to go through the following. First thing, we are going to define Bloom's taxonomy. And then we're going to identify the main skills that a student or a learner needs to master in each level. Then we're going to learn how to integrate some technological tools in each level. I'm going to demonstrate some of the apps and programs through the Pedagogy Wheel. I don't know if you heard about it before or not, but I'm sure that this one would be very beneficial for all of you. And then we're going to understand the criteria of apps selection, how you can select a certain app or a website for each level of the taxonomy. Okay, so now here, the first thing we are going to start with is identifying Bloom's taxonomy. Now, can you tell me from your own knowledge, what is Bloom's taxonomy? You can write that in the chat pod. Okay, let's see your answers here.
You don't have any responses yet?
Okay, so Misana says stages, how information covered to knowledge, different levels of thinking. We use it to classify and differentiate between student levels. Very good. A framework to be applied for learning. Bloom's taxonomy is a taxonomy for cognitive objectives. Okay. Now this is a very interesting definition, Mr. Bassem, and I'm going to talk about this point later on, that it's not only for cognitive but another knowledge levels. We are going to talk about this later. Okay. Now, okay, have you ever used it when you are planning your lessons as a teacher? Have you ever used it when planning your lessons? Let me check, because I think that maybe most of you have actually used it. Okay. Okay. So if you ever use Bloom's taxonomy to support you or to aid you in planning your lessons, please let me know how you've used it or how often have you used it. Okay, so Mr. Barak says we also use it when preparing tests. Miss Melanie says a framework of or level that can be applied for learning, help us planning lessons. Okay, yes, very good. To reach and get a child to a point he or she is able to apply the knowledge. Okay. Mr. Sneem says, yes, I always use it, especially with the forming rubrics or see how much they succeed to achieve the objects. Okay, I think you mean objectives. Very nice. Okay. Okay, great. Okay. Now, I'm sure that by the end of this session, you will be all able to understand how you can implement it in your lessons and how you can also integrate technology into it. So now I want you to scan this QR code. This will take you to another website, and think of a question that you will see. Okay, you will see a question, and I want you to write your answer. The question is, what are the kinds of apps or websites? What are the apps or websites that you mostly use with your students? Think of your online classes and think about the ones or the apps or the websites that you usually or you most use, the mostly used ones with your students. If you cannot scan the QR code, Ms. Maria has already shared the link in the chat pod. Hopefully this one will work this time. So you can simply just type a word or two. You don't need to type a full sentence, just the name of the app or the website that you are using. Now let's exit the presentation and check what were your answers. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So can you see your answers? This is an interesting website that it's called answergarden.ch, where you can simply share it with your students. Let's say maybe you are doing a brainstorming activity with them, or maybe a review at the end of the lesson, or a wrap up. So you can use this. And it's very interesting because when you have more than one answer that are exactly like when, let's say, 10 or 12 students type the same answer, at the end, you can see that it's written in bigger font. So you would know that the majority of the students have or understand this concept, or this is the correct answer. Okay, very nice. Okay, so now you can see what I mean. Now this, having Kahoot being the biggest, within the biggest font at the middle, this means that this is the most common used app or website that all of you use with your students. Okay, and I cannot agree more with you. Kahoot is extremely fun and really interesting, and all students love it, even the adult ones. I've tried it with my adult students, and they love it. It just sets the class on fire. Okay, so now let's go to Bloom's taxonomy and try to understand a little bit about it. Now, the history of Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy was first created in 1956 by Benjamin Bloom, who is a psychologist. And in 2001, it has been used till the year 2001 without any changes, until it has been revised by Anderson and Krathwohl in 2001. What are the changes that were made? Let's take a look at the taxonomy so you would understand what were the changes. Now, if you look at the taxonomy here, you can see that it's written in verbs. Now, the first or the original taxonomy was written in nouns. Okay, this is the first difference. The second difference is the evaluation and creation were exchanged, where actually they had the evaluation as the highest or the top of the pyramid in the original taxonomy, but then in 2001, they exchanged it. And so now the creation or creating is the top or the highest order thinking skill in the taxonomy. Okay, so let's take a look into the taxonomy. You can see that it's broken down into 6 stages. The first stage at the base of the taxonomy, or at the base of the pyramid, is remembering. And this is the first stage that you start with whenever you begin a new lesson or introduce a new information to your students. So it's simply about recalling facts and basic concepts. So if you look at the verbs, it will explain it a little bit to you. So at that stage, you simply ask your students to define something, to list something, to memorize something, or to repeat a certain word or a definition. Going up a higher level, which is understanding, in this stage, your students should be able to explain the ideas or explain the concept that they remembered in the first step. So you will find yourself using these words when you're planning, like your students will be able to classify or to describe or to discuss, explain, translate, and so on. If you want to move higher with your students in the order thinking skills, then the next step would be for them to apply, which means that the information that they remembered and understood, now they have to use it in new situations, such as executing, implementing, solving a certain equation, for example, if it's a math problem, demonstrate, interpret, schedule, or sketch. The higher order thinking skill after that is to analyze. So in this case, they need to start drawing connections among ideas. So they can connect the new concept that you taught them today with an older concept that they learned before, or maybe start to analyze it or break it down into smaller information. So they can differentiate, they can now organize, they can compare and contrast. So those are the verbs or the actions that you ask your students to do if you want them to excel in the analyzing or the analysis stage. The next step is to evaluate. So in this case, they need to argue or they need to defend a certain issue or judge something or support a certain opinion. After that, you have the creation stage, in which your students will use all of the information that they learned through the taxonomy to create a new idea or a new product. So in this case, you will ask them to design something, to assemble, to construct, to formulate, maybe to author, if it's maybe an English lesson or something, or to investigate. Now, the first three stages, remembering, understanding, and applying, we call them the lower order thinking skills. While analyzing, evaluating, and creating, we call them the higher order thinking skills. And of course, the higher you go, the better your students will be in that concept that you're teaching them. Now, how can we transform this taxonomy into a digital one? So this one can be easily applied in a regular lesson. You can use the previous verb that we discussed before while you are planning or writing down your plan. But how can we transform this into a digital one? How can we implement technology into this taxonomy? Here you have Bloom's digital taxonomy. This is a sample, actually, of how a digital taxonomy would look like. So instead of remembering while we use the verbs like define or list, we can simply use Google, or we can simply use copy and paste, or we can simply use highlight, okay? If we are going up into understanding, so we can use the verbs journaling, tweeting, tagging, subscribing. Applying, you can use charting, uploading. Analyzing, you can use mind mapping, surveying, linking. For evaluating, you can use posting, moderating, testing. And in the creation, you can use blogging, filming, podcasting, and directing. So here you can see that the verbs have totally changed into a digital verb. If you look at these verbs are can only be used in a digital context. You cannot use them in a regular pen and pencil classroom. They need to have technology in order to apply these actions. Now, if we take a look at a traditional versus digital, so I'm going to show you an example now of a certain lesson plan, okay, a very simple lesson, and I'm going to show you how a traditional lesson plan looks like versus the same lesson but planned in or with the digital taxonomy. So if we take a look at the student, for example, now we want her to go through each and every stage of the taxonomy. So you can see that the traditional taxonomy will be on the left for each stage, and the digital taxonomy will be on the right. Now, let's say we want to teach the student today about colors. So she never heard of the colors in English before, and we are going to teach her about colors. So if you are in a traditional taxonomy, you would simply ask her to list the names of colors. Or at the remembering stage, she will be able to list the names of colors. That's it. But she actually doesn't know the shape or which the color is actually which one of the colors. So she just knows them by name, not by actual shape. If I'm doing the same plan, but with digital taxonomy, I'm going to ask the student to search on Google for the names of colors. Okay. If we are going to the next step, it would be match the color with its photo, which is understanding. So now she can understand what colors are. So she's matching the color with the photo. So if, for example, you would be giving her cards and she would be matching the cards with the names of the colors. In a digital taxonomy, imagine in your online classroom, you want to do this with your students, but they don't, you're not with them in the same classroom. So what do? You use a Google Doc. You can attach each color and match it with its photo. What about applying? Now, I'm going to ask a student, for example, to demonstrate the colors in the same order of a rainbow. She can draw it in her notebook, or as a digital taxonomy, she can do it in a PPT, in a PowerPoint. So she's going to demonstrate the colors as the same order of a rainbow, but she's going to do it in a PowerPoint instead of a pen and paper or crayons and paper. The analyzing stage, your students should be able to differentiate between the color of a banana and a lemon, for example. So different shades of yellow, let's say. In a digital taxonomy, you're going to ask them to do this using Excel instead of using, again, crayons or pen and paper. The evaluation stage, you can simply have a debate. So the student will be able to debate with her friends. Is it like using one color or various colors more fashionable nowadays? In a digital taxonomy, they can watch a video and then express their opinions in a blog or in a discussion room. Last step, which is creating, you can simply ask your students, or they will be able to create a color-coded portfolio at that stage. But since they are not in an actual classroom, they are in a virtual class. So you would simply ask them to create a video or a movie, let's say on Protoon or any other movie creators, creator websites about colors. So I hope this comparison that you see now can show you what a traditional taxonomy looks like versus a digital taxonomy. When you are planning your lesson using Bloom's taxonomy in a regular classroom versus an online classroom. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat pod, and I'll be more than happy to answer them to you. Now, the pedagogy wheel. Remember when I showed you earlier the digital taxonomy, and I told you these are not all the verbs for the digital taxonomy. These are not all the activities that you can use in a digital taxonomy. Now, the pedagogy wheel has it all. If you look at the pedagogy wheel, this is how it looks like. You will find that it has the 6 stages of Bloom. Okay. Each part of it represent a stage, starting with remembering, then understanding, then applying, then analyzing, evaluating, and creating. The first section, or the first inner circle, shows you the action verbs, the verbs that you usually use with your students, okay, in a regular class and in a digital or a virtual class. The next circle would be the activities that you can do with them. And then the last circle will show you the apps or the websites that you can use for each stage of the taxonomy. Now, I know that it's a bit complicated and you cannot see it clearly now because it's quite huge and it has a lot of information. Because to be honest, in each stage, it has more than 30 apps, which means that this diagram or this pedagogy wheel can show you or can help you reach almost 180 or 190 apps that you can use while planning your lesson. So if you want to take a copy of the pedagogy wheel, there you go. This is the QR code. So you can simply scan it and it will give you access to a free downloadable PDF pedagogy wheel. Or if you cannot scan it, hopefully Ms. Maria can now share the link with you in the chat pod. And let me know if it works. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you. I just saw your comment. Yes, I can share my resources with you. No worries. I have your email now. Thank you, Shamila. Okay, I'll do my best. Okay. Okay, thank you, Ms. Pardees. Ms. Soha. Okay. So can you access the pedagogy wheel online? Just let me know, please. It's very important that you access it now because there will be an activity in the next slide that I want you to use your pedagogy wheel as reference when you are doing this activity. So please make sure that you have access to the pedagogy wheel now. Okay, now moving on to the next activity. Now, in this activity, I want you to imagine that you are planning. Let's not imagine, let's practice actually doing this. You have a lesson coming tomorrow, right? Or maybe next week. I want you to think of something, a mini lesson plan that you can think, or for one of your lessons, maybe an old lesson that you've taught before. And I want you to include at least 4 of Bloom's digital taxonomy stages in it. So the activity, I want you to do it in this Google Doc. So if you can scan the QR code, or if not, Ms. Maria, if you don't mind, I want you to share the link, the Google Doc link with them, so you can start working on it. Think of any lesson, doesn't have to be a new one, maybe an old one, and you might want to try to digitalize it a little bit. So I want you to be thinking about Bloom's digital taxonomy only. Don't think about regular planning using pen and paper. Okay, so I'm gonna share with you, I'm sorry, activity has an extra I. So let's see your answers. Okay. Okay, so each one of you, please pick a number, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you find that all the cells are taken, you can simply add a new or an extra one, no problems. Okay. I can see that there are only 11 or 12 working on the activity now. I want more. I want you all in place thinking about one of your lessons. Okay. Take your time. If you want, you can write your name next to the number. So in the number cell, write next to the number your name, and then you will have the other cells free to write your own plan. Okay, now this is the beauty of Google Docs, that you can see your students working instantly, synchronously, okay, and at the same time they can all see their work together as well. So you can use it as group work, you can use it as individual work. So it's amazing how Google Docs can be a very useful tool in different stages of Bloom, by the way. It's not just for remembering or understanding. You can also use it for creating. So it can be used basically in every single stage of the taxonomy. Okay, you don't have to write like full plan or full sentence. Just one activity with one app or one website would be perfect for 3 or 4 stages of the taxonomy. You don't have to do all of the 6, so we can have time for the rest of the presentation. So I'm going to give this activity 5 more minutes. It's good to refresh also every once in a while to check the updates. Okay. I have wonderful ideas here, by the way. Okay. So I can see here, Sanjita says, use Jammin board or quizzes for interactive learning based on the chapter taught. Okay, but what do you think, Sanjita? Can you start using quizzes at the stage of remembering? Your students are like being introduced to the information for the first time in their lives. What do you think? How can you use quizzes in that stage? Okay. Choose the right noun from the lessons. Okay, what is a noun? Okay, that's good, but I need to find out which application are you going to use with your students to choose the right noun from. Okay, search 5 cities in Europe on Google Maps. Excellent, wonderful. I love this activity. Classify them by their populations on Evernote. Amazing. Yeah, I can see here how you are taking them stage by stage and at the same time using technology in every stage. Perfect. Okay, search different types of mathematical transformations. Very, very good. So in this case, you can use the verb Google. So Google different types of mathematical transformations. Excellent. Using Google Slides, provide the definitions of the different types of transformations. Perfect. Okay. Very nice. So, mashallah, I can see that there are a lot of you here who are actually implementing technology in their classrooms perfectly. Okay. Have students unscramble letters to form words on Google Slide. Perfect. Write the names next to the pictures, Google Slides. Excellent. Okay. Complete the gap sentences on Google Slides or Docs as well. Very good. By the way, you can use the Google Suite, the whole suite. It can be used like throughout the whole taxonomy if you can implement it correctly, like using Google Docs or Google Sheets or Google Slides. So if you implement it correctly, you can just count on it for a whole lesson. Very nice. Okay, we have 2 minutes left. Use animations to introduce chapters without any sounds to initiate and allow learners to predict the ending. Okay, very nice. That's a very interesting idea. Okay. Using GeoGebra, okay, to show vectors. Excellent. Very nice. Okay, perfect. Now let's move on to the next part. So I'm happy that I can see a lot of you are interacting, and this means that you are actually benefiting from what you're doing. This is excellent. Now I want to show you a little trick in Google Docs, okay? But that's a secret. Don't tell anyone about it. This should be your own secret. Now, let's say I have this student, okay? And this student, I want to, let's say I'm correcting her spelling, for example, okay? So let's take a look at this one, difficult words. Now, do you see what happened here? When I click on this pencil, I have the option of suggesting. So what happens when I suggest? I can simply give feedback. Okay, maybe this is wrong or unclear or provide more details. So I would simply add a comment here. Okay, and tell her what the correct word is. So without typing, it had already put the autocorrect. The autocorrect have already created the comment saying that difficult word should be replaced with difficult space words. Okay, so this is something that you can use with your students, especially if it's in English class and you want to correct their English language, let's say grammatical mistake or spelling mistake or something. If you want simply to add a certain comment about a certain information, so you simply add a comment here and say, for example, good idea. Okay, and just add the comment. How can you do this? How can you do the autocorrect thing? Again, from this pen mode, instead of editing, choose the suggesting option. Okay? Yay. Now, I hope that you enjoyed this activity. Now, moving on to the resources, the app selection criteria. Now, after you have seen that you have about 180, 200 apps that you can use, how would you know that the app that you choose for certain activity or certain stage of Bloom's taxonomy is the right app for this stage? So the app selection criteria that you need to consider would be, first of all, is relevance. You have to make sure that the activity or the app that you chose is relevant to the activity that you are doing. So if you're asking your students to write down or to list a certain name, a certain number of names or definitions, so it's not good to use, for example, a video editor for it. It would be better if you used Google Docs or Word. Customization. It has to be, the app itself need to be easily customized so that your students can learn how to use it easily. Feedback. It should give you the chance to provide feedback to your students, whether synchronously or asynchronously. So you need to be able, as a teacher, to provide feedback to your students through this app or website. Thinking skills. Now, this app, are you using it to promote lower order thinking skills or higher order thinking skills? So do not use overcomplicated websites for remembering, for example. Engagement. Will your students be happy or interested or eager to use this app, or would it be boring for them? Okay. So the level of engagement, for example, that I saw with you in the Google Docs when you are doing the Bloom's taxonomy activity was amazing. So it's important to know what interests your students so you would be able to collect or select the right app. And then sharing. Now, your students' work, will you be able to share it with their peers? Will your students be able to share it with you, or they will be the only ones who can access it or see it? This is another important point that you need to take in consideration when you are selecting your educational app. Okay? Okay. So I'm going to give you a gift, which is a sample app evaluation checklist. Okay? So this is a sample app evaluation checklist. It's not the only one out there, but I found that this was one of the simplest yet most effective evaluation checklists. As you can see, this one here, there is a QR code for it, so you can download it for free. It's a PDF document. Ms. Mariah kindly shared the link with you in the chat pod. So what happens here, you can see, for example, that are you going to use an Android app or Apple, or is it web-based? So something on the laptop. Okay, so maybe your students don't have their phones with them, but they have their laptops or computers. So you have to put that in consideration when you are choosing the exercise or the app for certain exercise or certain stage of Bloom. Okay, now indicate which of the following areas which may be impacted by your learners. Okay, the app targets. So here, for example, phonology, attention, visual motor skills, language, memory, visual spatial, or what they call it, perceptual skills. So this is another thing that you can put. Which skill are you targeting that your students need to develop when they are doing this activity using this app or website? Then you will have criteria, which is very much similar to what we have discussed earlier in the previous slide. So the app increases the student understanding skills, yes or no? The app provides student with feedback, yes or no? The app settings can be customized. So you can see the customizable part here, yes or no. And the more yeses you have, then this means that this app would be suitable for your activity. Okay. Now, another thing that I want to share with you, which is another gift for you, which is the app evaluation rubric. Now, the app evaluation rubric allows you also to grade the extent of the effectiveness of your app in each of the 7 criteria that we have discussed earlier. Okay, so you can also get the link of this in the chat pod, or you can simply scan the QR code here. Don't worry if you don't, if you were unable to access any of the resources that we have shared with you now during the session. It will be shared with you later on via email. So don't worry about it. Okay, if you can do it now, it's fine. If not, don't worry, we will share the link sheet with you. Okay, so as you can see here, that this one shows you like the relevance. If you are talking about relevance, how relevant is it? And it's scored from 4 to 1. Now, 4, of course, is the highest, where the app's focus has a strong connection to the purpose for the app and appropriate for the student. Now, those resources can be reused every single time you plan a new lesson. And all the lessons that you've planned, you can save it for next year and the year after. And this is the beauty of technology. So it's not a paper that it's going to be thrown away at the end of the year. Okay. Now, why Bloom? Why is Bloom so important? Why is it been used all that long and it's still effective up till now? Bloom doesn't only focus on the cognitive process dimension, which is remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. But it also has another dimension that it focuses on, which is the knowledge dimension. So for example, when you are asking your student to create or to make a video or to create a PowerPoint or something, you are not only developing their creation in the cognitive process dimension, but you are also developing their metacognitive skills in the knowledge dimension. The student will be able to understand him or herself and the amount of information that they have got from your lesson, and they will understand the extent of their understanding, well, and whether is it enough for them to create something out of it or not. So you can see that Bloom's taxonomy works in 2 dimensions, not in just 1 dimension. Now, I'd like to answer questions. So if you have any questions for me, so please write it down in the chat pod for now. And while you're doing that, please scan this QR code. This is another Padlet link, but I'm sure that this time it's going to work. I want you to write your opinion about today's session. Okay, so when you scan the code, I want to show you what you will see. Okay, this is it. No, not this one. I'm sorry. This is, yeah, it's this one. Let me make sure that it's public. Okay. It's secret. So I need to change the privacy. I think that's why the first one because once they create on Padlet, they allow you to have it as secret at first, and then you have to change the settings into public. I think that's why the first one did not work. Let me check. Yes, that's why you couldn't edit the first Padlet. It should be public. So my apologies that I haven't checked that at before we start. So now you are able to edit both. Okay. Okay. So let's get back here and check if you have any questions. Please, if you have any questions, share them in the chat pod here so we can discuss them. Thank you, Sanjita, for listening. Okay, Pardis, you want me to repeat the secret? Okay, the one about the, okay, let me show you. This one was in the Google Doc. Okay, I'm gonna show it again. So you go to this pen, which is called you find it in the editing mode. So you simply go there and change it into the suggesting mode. Now, let's say you want to add a certain, let's say you want to correct a certain grammatical mistake or a spelling mistake to one of your students. So you would simply go to any word that you can find that is written, for example, wrong. Okay, so you would add a comment here on this word like this, and you would simply say delete IDE because I clicked on the backspace on IDE. So this is a way of checking your students' work. Now, transformations here, for example, you see it shows you the suggestion, which is the correct form of the word. So you simply click on it and it will show up in a comment or a suggestion on the side. Replace transformations with transformation. All you have to do is just double click on the word and that's it. Now I hope you were able now to understand the secret. Okay. You still can't edit the Padlet. Okay, let me give it a try and refresh. Maybe this time it will work. This one. Okay. So can you try it one more time now? I'm hoping that this time, yes, it is public now. Change privacy, permissions, you can write, yes. So now you are able to write your comments. Yes, I can see Burak. Yes, I started seeing comments here. Let me show you how it looks like. So you as a teacher, if you haven't used Padlet before, you will be able to see how you can see everything in front of you synchronously. I used to use this with my students, especially at the feedback and reflection at the end of the session. So my students loved writing their feedback. I used to do the KWL chart with them on it. Have you ever heard about the KWL chart? The want to know what I learned. So I would put it for them as a KWL. K for what I already know before the lesson about this session. W, what I want to know more about, and L, what I learned today. So you can use the KWL chart with your students at the end of every session. Okay. Yes, Tasneem, yes, you can start. Yes, you can start with it by knowing what they already know. So let's say, what do you know about flowers, for example? And they fill out the first part, which is the K. And then the W and the L, they can do it at the end of the lesson. So once you have finished your lesson with them, they will write about what they learned and what they want to know more about after this lesson. Okay. I can see a lot of replies here. Thank you very much for your positive thoughts and words. And again, if you have any questions, you can, by the way, you can simply, let me show you one more thing. You can follow here my page on LinkedIn, Teachagen's page on LinkedIn and on YouTube, where you will find our latest updates. Whenever we have a webinar coming or any kind of activity or information, we usually share almost every day a new piece of information on our social media websites. We also have pages on Facebook and on Twitter. You can simply search for Teachagen, okay, with a dash before the O and after the O. So teach-o-gen. So you can follow us, and we would be more than happy to help you anytime. Okay, Paradise says, how can I find more games about subject and use it in classes for teenagers? Okay, so for this, as we just mentioned, with the Pedagogy Wheel in your hands, you have access to almost 200 apps. Okay, so you need to think about your activity, the activity that you are planning for your students. Is it for remembering? Is it for understanding? Is it for analyzing? For which stage of the order thinking skills are you preparing this activity? Once you have decided that, you go straight to this section in the Pedagogy Wheel. And in this section, you will find like more than 30 apps or websites that you can use. And you can pick to be most suitable for your students, technological levels, of course, and their technological access. Do they have access to, let's say, a laptop, or they have an iPad, so they can have access to an app store? Here, you can decide which app would be best for this. Okay, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, Ms. Isra. Thank you for coming on our platform and giving us such informative session. I'm getting very good feedback. People love it. And an email will be sent soon with your certificate and recording of this session for all the attendees. And the links that Ms. Isra has been sharing throughout the webinar will be shared in the same email. Thank you so much, Ms. Isra. It's always a pleasure to have you over.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Most welcome.
Thank you for listening. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Hope to see you in our future webinars. Please connect to our pages and keep a lookout on our website as well for the upcoming webinars. Bye for now.